Right, on site today and fitting rafters on this bit. So I've just got to work out the intersection. I want a 300mm overhang off of this beam and that beam matching, and obviously the rafters at the front of the overhang want to match, so I've got a little bit of working out to do over there, but we'll get into that in a minute. But just to unpack the rafters, I did notice about a week ago that they were going mouldy, like the people that have made them have stacked them all tight, there's no stickers between them. Right, I can't really film up here and work, but what I've done to set this up is I've took a rafter and just cut roughly, I know roughly what angle it was on here, and then I've set a nail or a screw in the end with what I thought was my bit of timber left there. So I want about, I know this is shallower, I've got to be shallow because that roof or rafter is quite a steep pitch. It's going to kick the end of the rafter at 300mm away from here, lower down in the roof. So in order for this one to then meet that at the same height, I've got to have a bigger seat cut on this eaves, like the eaves cut here. It's got to be deeper into the wood to meet the end of the timber there at that same perimeter. So I knew it was going to be quite a deep one. I've started with a 50mm cut, so it's got a really big bird's mouth there, leaving 50mm timber on the top. So what I did was set from the bottom of here 50mm up, put a nail in the end, and that gives me this piece of timber 50mm down from this position. And then once I've cut this end to suit that 50mm, everything should drop by that amount. It's the same underneath there as it is above there, so I'm effectively doing a cut of that height at that end of the beam. Then it's just a case of doing a plumb line, which I'll mark on with a level in a minute, to get my plumb cut, and that's dead easy. What's not easy is these are going to have a routed housing in these beams, so it just adds a little complication to it. But I've got to go along for everywhere there's a rafter and cut like probably about that size of a housing out of it, so that it sits on a little ledge on here and isn't just like a plumb cut and a few nails. It's got like a mechanical hold within the timber itself. So that one's fairly easy, and that was just a starting point. There wasn't any sort of set value for that. And then set this one up, similar sort of method, but I'm just working on top of this beam. So I've got a screw in the bottom of there to hook that over, so it's going to be on top of the point there. And then I've just basically packed this end off of the corner of the eaves here until I get to a point where at 300mm away from both points, this is going to land in, you know, whatever that height of that cut there is, which is about 130mm. I've marked on here, so like this mark here, from there to that plumb line there is my 300mm, and then that height from there down to that cut is where the top of this rafter will sit. So that's where the top of that one has got to end up at 300mm from here. So what I did was just set this one up 300mm away, plumb or parallel with this beam, so it gives me the 300mm location, and then I've just packed it up until, you know, I've got 130mm from there to this mark here, which is basically just line the timbers up with that, and that gives me the sort of seat cut size of this one. So now to get my seat cut, it's just however much that needs to drop to become flush is the same amount of marking off this beam up to that cut there. So that's what that one is, and it's, yeah, I've got a bird's mouth in there, so that's fine. That's perfectly enough to lodge that beam on there. What I'm going to do is just rip a couple of bits of plywood down and cut them without doing the housings, so then I can cut basically these bird's mouths and everything and check it without having to cut a housing in here yet for it to lodge into, so, you know, it's less committal. Oh, Bob, the dog's got the right idea, hasn't he? Look at him. Right, so after plenty of head scratching and a remake of the template after the first one up, got the two rafters poking through from the points I need to, so that they meet down here in the right place, so they're at the same height over there with different bird's mouth cuts here. The reason I changed from this one is because it had to notch around the back of the beam at that perimeter line there, so I've raised everything up at this end so that the cut here isn't around the back edge of the beam, but it just makes that bird's mouth really small, which I don't think will be an issue. Everything lines up quite nicely now, so that's given us a line over there on the wall. Don't know if you can see it on that brickwork, that the roofer can now use to get his lead set. So we're just going to move over here and cut these rafters on this side, which is nice and easy. So there we go, got that shoulder cut all the way around that rafter. I just made a little jig to router out the bit in the ridge beam. So that jig will effectively router a slot the same as that. So I just mitre glued it using the same method that I make my router hinge jigs with. So yeah, we just clamp that up in place in the position of each rafter, router around it. Got a little trend cutter that sticks below the 15mm required to router them in, and that'll make a housing for them to just locate in, hopefully. Right, so there's a little housing we've routed out, and the end of the rafter. I've gone one-handed, get it in place. I'll show you what it looks like. There you go. So a shoulder line is still like you would be if you'd cut it just flat onto there, but you've got an extra little ledge and a location slot. We'll just get a fixing in through here into the ridge beam. I'm going to do the same with all these down here as well, but my little router's not man enough, so I've just beefed the jig up to suit that big trend cutter I've got that just eats through wood. So now I can mill them out with my big router. Should be a bit easier. There you go, first bit of roof covering on, look at that. What a beauty. Just a nice little bit of protein to finish the day off after a long day up and down ladders. Whoa. There we go, that's the first rafters sat in place. I'm just going to screw them at the ridge while we set up for the other side to make sure that ridge beam is in exactly the sort of plane it's going to sit in, which is nice and level. And we've got a little batten, we've got to screw a batten on the wall, which the render will go up to, which will also take the, it's been overboarded with some oak boarding, so that will take the ends of the oak boarding. Yeah, that rafter spacing worked out well with the run on the other side, so yeah, it's perfect position. Having the drawing really helped to position these, so there's not a lot of thinking about it at this stage. It's all been done beforehand in the drawing, so you just mark to a measurement and away you go.